Hello, Internet, and thank you very much for tuning into the Cloud Native FM podcast channel. And hope you will enjoy the conversation. We're actually about to kick starting, but let me actually give you some agenda first. What we're actually covering today, the things we're covering today, I think you will really enjoy the most. So you actually been using Kubernetes cluster locally, but what have been you are using currently in your local system? Are you using K3s, Minikube, Kind, or Docker Desktop for local development, or Podman Desktop and doing local development inside the Podman Desktop? Or are you using like one of my favorite Minikube? So which one are you using? Do let me know in the chat. But one of the things actually talking right now, the world ultra fast, ultra simple, and ultra fascinating managed Kubernetes offering, the world first K3s manage offering from Civo Cloud team. So Civo gives you simplicity. Civo offers a user-friendly platform that simplifies Kubernetes cluster management. Civo allow you affordability and is known for its cost-effective Kubernetes cluster. Civo infrastructure designed for speed. Civo makes it easy to scale your Kubernetes cluster up or down based on your application need. Civo has a strong focus on developers, offer tooling and features that cater to their need. Civo provide managed services for Kubernetes, and Civo has a wonderful community, active community, do some of the meetups, and they also do Civo Navigate. We're talking about today two successful execution of Civo Navigate, and Civo Kubernetes cluster integrates seamlessly with other cloud native technologies, and Civos offer clusters in multiple data center locations around the world. And this geographical diversity is essential for ensuring low latency access for users across different regions. And Civo prioritize security, implementing best practices to protect Kubernetes clusters and the application running on them. So, with that simple set of introduction, let me go straight to my guest, who is a founder of that project, and I would like to know how we actually came up with the world fastest Kubernetes clusters powered by Civo. Over to you, Mark, your intro, and then we actually start discussing some amazing tech bit behind Civo. Over to you, Mark.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for that. That was an amazing introduction there to Civo. I think you said it pretty much everything there that we do, but we can still deeper dive into that kind of stuff. But yeah, thank you for that amazing introduction. Yeah, just to introduce myself, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Civo, and a little bit about me, my history before we get to Civo, because I've been in technology now for about nearly 25 years. The first company I founded was back in 1999, so it's starting to show my age, but it was actually a domain name and kind of shared web hosting company, much like your GoDaddy, type company where you'd buy your first domain name, you need to host your first website. And I scaled that business over a period of about 20 years to become the fifth largest domain and hosting company in the UK. And it was sold in 1999. Sorry, it was sold in 2019, rather. It was founded in 1999. And yeah, the focus for that business was always simplicity and great customer service. So there's a lot of things that I learned from that time. And it grew to be hosting 400,000 websites. And at the time, the largest in the UK had about 2.1 million websites under management, a company called 123reg, and they actually got acquired by GoDaddy. So a lot of what I learned, and what taken into Civo has been from my days, founding LCN. But I also believed in sort of diversifying as well. So in about 2008, I founded a data center business, and we actually built our own data centers, and that still operates today. I'm still the kind of a chairman of that business, if you like, and that operates a data center in the UK. It's called Server Choice. And then diversified again into telecommunications and building high-speed fiber networks around the UK. And also cybersecurity. I'm involved in a cybersecurity company that I founded called defense.com. and also a consulting business called Bulletproof. So quite a diverse technology experience. But I've obviously taken a lot of those learnings over the years, and when we had the idea of launching Civo, really most of the businesses that I founded were very UK specific, and one of my goals really as kind of a founder, if you like, was to test myself on an international level, to run a truly global business. So when we founded Civo, we actually launched into the US first, rather than the UK. We sold in dollars. The UK region came second. We then went into Frankfurt. We've now got the second US region, and most of our customers are actually non-UK. So that was something, just a personal challenge of my own, to sort of run and operate a global business. And I guess it's so much easier nowadays than it was back when I first started, because we're in that kind of global economy now.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think absolutely, and I think that's diverse knowledge is actually a reflection people can observe from the Civo Kubernetes cluster as well. Like, you actually nailed into the Kubernetes. You have even figured out how well the security setup is maintained, how well there are things like proper managed services. It's kind of a thinking, like, it's come from a mind of the people that have a diversified, that has a knowledge of different pieces from the IT sector, that can easily be understood by some of the things actually accomplished in their previous years. And it's too much. Like, even my whole life is actually, even how old I am is actually how much of the knowledge how much of the experience you actually get from the things you're actually working on. So one question I think people like to listen and actually want to hear from you, I think way back in 2019, 2020, when we were actually saying, everybody's saying the internet, Kubernetes is so complex, and we're figuring out a way how people install Kubernetes locally, because it's a mess. It's a huge mess for Kubernetes, because you have four control plane components and three worker node components. There are 7 of things, and all these 7 things have some kind of subset of tech innovation on all behind it. And I think we see some kind of wave, like a Kubernetes distro came up, and we saw the K3s, quite a simpler one. And you choose a first, like, people use K3s, they love about it, there's a huge community behind it, but you take another step, and that's a very difficult step at that moment of time. Might be in 2019 or 2018, even you before that. Like, you choose K3s and give people a managed K3s offering inside Civo Kubernetes cluster. And when you first started, do you think is this idea get hits?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. When we first launched, the first thing that Civo was offering was an infrastructure as a service offering, which was just a VM, plain VMs, Ubuntu or whatever, installed on that. And I guess that was the easiest service for us to kind of get launched kind of quickly. And we saw, Kubernetes getting adopted, and the adoption going up, and a lot of interest around it. We obviously looked at what other companies in the space were doing and what the hyperscale companies were doing. And at the time, Kubernetes itself was very big and bloated in nature. And then we saw that Rancher had, launched K3s, a lightweight version of Kubernetes without all the bloat. And we thought, well, this could actually be a really good option, to build this lighter weight version of Kubernetes but uses less memory, less disk space, gives you more access to the resources that you're paying for. It can be launched in, even when we first launched it, we were launching in like 2 minutes. And at the time, most hyperscale providers were like 30 minutes plus, to launch this bloated version of Kubernetes. So we felt like it was a great offering, that was going to be more agile, quicker to launch, especially for development clusters and things like that. But then we thought, well, actually, for running in production, why wouldn't you want that agility and speed and things as well? And over time, we've evolved the product, and we've actually put, if you like, Civo's kind of take on K3s. So it's not kind of necessarily vanilla K3s. We've actually brought in some high availability components. You don't actually get access to the control plane. We manage that for you. And we've built a lot of Kubernetes operators that, that manage all the functionality around the edge that actually enhance the kind of vanilla K3s to give a production level experience for Kubernetes. So for us, it's been a great success, and it works well for. We've got obviously lots of development companies using us for development and things and testing, but actually we have some customers that are using it at quite a large scale as well. We've got one client that springs to mind that's got 2,500 nodes running across about 5 different clusters in about 2 to 3 different regions that we've got. So people are using it at scale as well. So yeah, big success from our point of view.
Absolutely, and I think and we can actually ask this question because you actually in this debate mentioned this. What industries or sector have you seen the most adoption of Civo Kubernetes clusters?
Yeah, it's a real mix, but I'd probably say if I had to pick one, it would be kind of newer emerging like SaaS companies, that are building SaaS businesses. And, I guess they're looking for options to launch, their business quickly, keep things simple, keep the costs down, that kind of stuff. So a lot of SaaS companies have been using Civo to great effect. And the good thing is that they'll come in, especially newer companies that are coming into the SaaS world, they're kind of thinking Kubernetes first. They haven't got the legacy baggage, of an older company who's got to try and do a transformation away from, traditional VMs into containers and things like that. So we've had a lot of adoption in those kind of modern SaaS companies.
Yes, absolutely. And now we come to the another question. Like, might be people actually watching us. They have the kind of things like, why are there any pricing model or strategies that Civo uses to help businesses or to optimize their costs while using Kubernetes?
I mean, Civo itself, we've kind of when we talk about ourselves compared to say hyperscale providers, we there's 3 simple things that we focus on, which is we're simpler, faster, and cheaper. And taking the simplicity and the kind of the cost element of that, what we've done is we've kept things very simplistic in terms of the billing models that we run. So in some ways, we always think, and we kind of joke internally that if you're with a hyperscaler, you've got to almost have tools and FinOps tools and things like that to try and make sense of all your costs, and you got all these hidden charges and all these different types of costs and things, and egress charges and usage-based costs. And we've kind of thrown that all out the window and just focused on very simple and predictable billing. So month to month, what you should be able to predict, exactly what your bills should be. There should be no surprises. So we don't have any kind of fancy tools that we operate to tell you how to manage your costs, because in essence, the way we offer our services, it's very simple, and you should be able to take care of those costs without having to have any tools or anything in place. So I think that's a really important thing, because especially for when you're starting off in cloud, it tends to be quite low cost. You don't need many resources and things. But as you start to scale out and you start to use various different products, and you're auto scaling and doing all these different things, it can get very, very complicated, especially in that hyperscaler world. So you quite often the cloud bills start to get out of control. So what we're trying to do is just bring that back to basics and give the users and the companies that use our product the control and predictability in the billing that we provide.
Yes, absolutely. I can totally understand that as well. And also that on the topic of the same question, I think you talk about what the business is actually using and what are the use cases you have seen are the best suited for Civo Kubernetes clusters while working with some enterprise customers.
Yeah, it's a real mixture. I think I mentioned already that testing and development is a natural fit because of our fast launch times. But in some ways that's in the early days people felt like that's all we could do because of our fast launch times. It's test and development, but we've built a lot more enterprise offerings into Civo. We actually also have a separate, rather than just use K3s, you can actually use Talos as your operating system, which is a hardened, more secure version of Kubernetes as well. So we have other offerings that are more focused on a more security conscious customer. We're getting into things like machine learning. We have GPUs now that you can attach to your clusters and things like that as well. So there's various different use cases away from, say, development and testing. And as I mentioned, we've got SaaS companies that are using us extensively, and there's a few larger enterprise customers that use us as well. There's a real mixture, but I think I'd say the perfect type of client that for Civo is really, I guess, a customer that's maybe looking to reduce that complexity of operating Kubernetes clusters, that potentially hasn't got access to hundreds of engineers to manage this kind of stuff around the clock, and that we take a lot of that kind of management on for them, and a lot of the burden and difficult tasks and things and administration that has to be done to manage the clusters and manage the billing. So I think we're very well suited to those kind of growth companies or mid-market companies that are looking to get value for money and bring simplicity and not spend huge salaries on large teams to manage complex clusters in hyperscalers. Is there any more questions coming through? Can you still hear me? Apologies for those of you watching. I think we've got some technical problems. If you can hear me. Hopefully we'll have things back to normal soon. I don't think the problem's my side, so hopefully everyone out there can still hear me. Hopefully we can have things back working in a moment. But I don't have control of the studio, so if you can just bear with us, please.
Oh, sorry, Mark. I'm back. I think I accidentally click a wrong button and it goes away. But I think that's is actually a very good that's a very good gesture for the people. Like if you have a cluster and in terms of there are some glitches happening and the cluster takes 10 minutes to boot up and your application are running on top of it. It's so much of the life hacking there. So that's Mark is talking about the simpler, cheaper, and faster way to think about cluster as well. But absolutely, I think what you can actually talk about there, I lost for the purpose, but I think we can actually go back to this conversation. Is you talk about there are cluster and people are having some challenges because Kubernetes has four control plane components, three worker node components, seven of them updating, patching, updating. It's as difficult as you wish. So now people thinking we have a faster, simpler, and cheaper Kubernetes cluster, and I can actually it's get my job simpler. But how does Civo actually assist users in tasks such as upgrades, updates, backups, and maintenance of their Kubernetes cluster?
Yeah, I think first of all, with the way that K3S, was originally designed to operate, is that you had a you could actually run workloads on the main control plane node as well as the worker nodes. Um, when we first launched the product, we actually allowed users to deploy workloads to that control plane node. But what we discovered, obviously, is that when that was overloaded, it then caused problems with the control plane. So quite quickly, we abstracted that away and we took control of managing the control plane node. So that's probably the difference between one of the main differences if you install vanilla K3S, you'll get access to that main control plane node and you can run workloads on it. But it wasn't really fit for purpose for us to deploy it in that way within a cloud environment. So by taking that the control of that control plane, we're able to scale it. If it needs to be scaled, like for instance, if you have a larger amount of nodes in the cluster, it tends to need more RAM within the actual control plane. So we auto scale the RAM and the resources required to run the cluster. And then we, of course, make sure that control plane is highly available and it's backed up and all the other things that you would normally have to do yourself if you operated it. So that leaves our users to just manage the tenant nodes themselves and not have to ever worry about the control plane.
Yes, absolutely. That's simpler. That's. I think that's a way to. That's the approach. I think these days as well. Like people wanted to have. I think don't. See, I believe we don't see people using Kubernetes cluster locally, working with control plane and getting behind it. That's engineering complexity in future is abstracted away from them. Like EKS, AKS, GKE, they're all actually giving you the control plane is hidden from you. And that's where I think the industry in the Kubernetes goes. And now I think that we can start this conversation is the platform and the platform engineering, IDP, these stuff is happening and a rapid pace. Like if you look at the IDP movement, it is actually in a very steady phase, backstage, developer portals, platform engineering stuff is always in the news in some sort of it. So how do you see like these, because development cluster is million of developers need Kubernetes to run their application, and application Kubernetes is gigantic. It's not a very simpler thing, it's a complex distributed system. So how these two things stitch together in future, like development clusters, IDP, and the big notion towards self-service capabilities for the developers.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that when it comes to platform engineering and that we have, there's different types of customers. There's use cases where um, the end user might want a lot more control over things and actually get a lot more hands on. And then you have users that are, I guess, are more, coding and just want to deploy things and turn on auto scaling and that kind of stuff. So it's definitely, we're moving into a world where we're abstracting more and more of the complexity away. And things like platform as a service are definitely, I think, are going to be interesting. But the need for platform engineering is always going to be there, especially when it comes to what we do ourselves. We have to kind of do a lot of platform engineering, and companies with complex use cases might have to do more platform engineering and things. So I think the concept is obviously evolving all the time, and there's always new things happening. And I know we've put out some research is available on our website, that's kind of demystifying some of the things around platform engineering, what it means. People talk about DevOps versus platform engineering, but they're two different things, and we kind of talk around that. So it's probably worth checking out that piece, because that was quite a lengthy piece of research and things. And we conducted some where we actually got a lot of third parties to contribute towards that research. So that might be a good place to start if you're interested in finding out more about platform engineering.
Yes, absolutely. And Civo.com is your go-to resource. You will find some wonderful research and articulated blog on platform engineering, Kubernetes, and there are some marketplace extension also exists for Civo Kubernetes cluster. So that's where you have tools like Kyverno, Argo CD, Parallels, or stuff like that. You can extend the functionality of Kubernetes and use those tools as well. So those are available in the Civo marketplace as well. That's one of the things actually I really like about Civo as well. So now we circle back our conversation to Mark is Civo Navigate, and tell us some big wins from Civo Navigate. I believe you did it twice a year. There's one new come up, and the Civo Navigate, I think for taxes, I guess, is a Civo is deadline is 8th October. It's very few days remaining. So please hurry up, people. Try to submit one. So now, actually, Mark, two successful execution of Civo Navigate in a calendar year 2023, and I knew there are some very big wins, but I'm looking forward to knowing from you what are your top two, three, or top five wins from Civo Navigate from both version. Five top wins from Civo Navigate both version in a calendar year 2023. Over to you now.
Yeah, I can tell a little bit about Civo Navigate, and first of all, maybe a little bit about how it got started. And the first event, as you mentioned, was this year in February in Tampa in Florida, and we decided about 6 months before that we wanted to launch our own tech conference. And Civo has always been very big in the community. We've always tried to give back as much as we can. We built a sort of 60 video Kubernetes course that's free. It's not even gated. You can go on our website and actually do that. And it's got different chapters from beginners to more advanced users. We've built a Slack community that has sort of 30,000 people in that. We sponsor a lot of meetups and things, and we support as much as we can in sort of community elements. So when we had the idea for our own tech conference, we didn't want it to be just about Civo. And in fact, it's not about Civo. It's an event that we host, and we do have one session where we give an update on our kind of project kind of roadmap of all our different products and things. But apart from that, the focus of the event is to bring the best of cloud native and best speakers from all over the world, to talk about various subjects, like Kubernetes, machine learning, and security and observability, and all the different things, DevOps, platform engineering, those kind of things. And a big thing we wanted to do is make sure that it was done in a way that people had great fun. And so it was about really good learning, innovation, and having a good time. So when we put on these events, we tend to choose venues that are not large conference centers. They're more fun, smaller venues, but we still have up to 1,000 people there. And we look for amazing food. We normally have a few surprises. We play some games during some of the sessions as well, in between the sessions and things like that. We have prizes that are given away. In Tampa, we had, because it was very hot that time of year in February in Florida, we had a courtyard with ice cream. We had some cocktails on a rooftop bar. We had different things going on as well. So it's fun as well as about learning, and we have lots of workshops and things. So we run it twice a year, as you mentioned, and we just had the one in London, which is a great success. And I think we were quite fortunate because in September, you never know what the London weather was going to be like, but it was about 30 degrees, which is unusual for that time of year. So it was almost like Florida. And everyone had a great time. We had Kelsey Hightower as one of the keynote speakers in London. And back in Tampa, we had Steve Wozniak, and I got to meet him, myself, and spend a bit of time with him. Obviously a legend in computing as well. So, I think the key takeaways for me is always the great conversations that you have with people and what you learn. I'm always a believer that, you're never too old to learn. And also I'm always learning, not just from, experienced people. I'm learning from young people. I'm learning from the next generations, because they're seeing the world in a different way to what, I might do. And they're using different tools and different platforms and different ways of working. So I think you can always learn things from anyone. So I think to have so many great conversations with people at these events, it's always great to see. And also we get a lot of love for Civo. So it's always very humbling to see, in high regard that people hold Civo as well, and hearing the good feedback from our users and our events as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. As you mentioned, they have a great success. I think one thing I really like about the content from the conference, because some people want to grasp Kubernetes concept or the cloud native concept that are not easier to grasp. And if they follow some of the industry leaders in that space and they're talking to them in person, and the live Q&A become an interactive session. And as you mentioned, experts like Kelsey Hightower, Siam Pathak, Sergio Mendes, Mourinho Vijay, and there are some very big name in that conference. And twice a year, like KubeCon twice a year, Civo twice a year, learning purposes, fun talks, and that's a super way. I think it's all credit to all the members of the Civo team who actually make this conference a very interactive one as compared to some of the other conference happening everywhere in the world. Even right now we're talking, there are some conference happening. Even the DockerCon is happening today. So there are things happening everywhere in the day. But the Civo has made a tradition to have some knowledge gathering session and community engagement and feedback session from cloud native technology. I think that's a very new way of organizing the conference as well. And remember, the Civo Navigate that happening next year in February, I guess, or what time of the year you can check it, is deadline is 8 October. This is a link. Submit the CFP and you will see some wonderful talks are lining up as well. Even you can go past this link, Civo Navigate, and watch the past talk. You will be actually amazed by one of the how the diversified content available for this conference is. It's incredible effort from the team who actually put on for the whole year. So now, before we wrap up the discussion, you have some background from the F1, and people might think the fastest, the cheaper, and the simpler might came from the F1 career from your past. So there are some rapid fire questions from you. Number one, what is a overlapping technology you see in F1 tech and in Kubernetes tech?
Yeah, so a little bit of background on that, guys. You're picking up on, I did motor racing when I was younger, and got up to a pretty high level. I did karting first, and I was very successful and managed to finish second in the British Championships. And then I moved into car racing and various different formulas, and I got to Formula 3. And I was one step away from getting to Formula 1, but unfortunately needed a lot of sponsorship to kind of carry on. So I guess your question stems from my motor racing background, and there is definitely a lot of parallels. And I think certainly for me as a kind of founder, I've learned a lot from what I've taken from sport and put into business. I think especially I guess it's given me a competitive spirit, in terms of to keep improvement, continuous improvement, because when you're competing, especially, every hundredth of a second or counts when you're racing, and you're always looking for that improvement and that extra lap time, that speed, so, with Civo, we're always looking to improve. We're always looking for that next big thing. We're always searching. We're always, reviewing also what we've got and how can we do it better. So I've certainly learned that myself, and I've taken that into, not just Civo, but the other businesses that I've founded in the past. Obviously, yeah, Formula One is very technology driven, and we have a lot of employees that are fans of Formula One. It's probably the most it seems to be the most popular sport among techies in that regard. And it's I know they're always very fascinated with all the telemetry data and things like that. And I guess there's a lot of parallels when it comes to Kubernetes, of the health of your clusters and the telemetry and the observability and all those kind of things and stuff. So yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of parallels. And I'd probably say one of the other things, going back to the Civo as a company, is that one of the main things from my time in racing, and you see this in Formula One, is the teamwork. It's not just about the driver, it's about the people, the mechanics and the engineers that, the engineers that design the car, the mechanics that build the car and maintain the car. You've got a pit crew that has to do your tires, and everyone has to be top of their game to perform as a team. So you learn a lot from that as well. And I think, at Civo, we've got an amazing culture. We've got some fantastic people. I'm so proud of the culture that we've built. We've been a bit different again. We like to be different, as I keep saying, but, we're a 4-day week company, which is quite, unique in that respect. And we tend to do things in a different way. And we're a real sort of family knit unit. So I think I've learned from the racing and sort of brought some of those things, like that teamwork ethic of working together, to make things successful. So I don't know if that answers your question, but there seems like there's a few parallels there for you.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I'm super agreed. I think Civo is one of the team. You see a wonderful teamwork within the collaborative teamwork, and Civo Navigate is one of those example. And all the Civo technology is one of those example of that teamwork as well. And as mentioned, Mark, is I think F1 is one of those support. It's like you have a championship for driver and the championship for the constructor. So that's one of the things, like you can actually you can actually fine tune the vehicle that the driver use it, and you can see the faults in it, renovate it, make new text, add in it, and make sure when the race is happening, things work as expected. So that's one way to think about it. That's one thing I really like about Formula One as well. But there are a few rapid fire more question. How many laps in a Kubernetes company or in a Kubernetes individual or as founder do take, how many lab it takes, and he finally learned he doing mistake, and now is a time for the improvement?
Yeah, I think I guess some things, you work well out the box. When people are, we're still relying on humans, aren't we, to code and to do things. Maybe in 10 years' time, who knows, we might not be. But in a way, when there's humans involved, there's always error. And we've always had a thing in Civo, is that we have a no blame culture. No one has to say sorry when mistakes are made or anything like that. But occasionally, there might be a small bug in something, or something that has to be fixed and improved. And some things go out perfectly and never have any problems, and then other things do have the odd issue here and there. So but I think going back to what I said before about continuous improvement, I think it's important to not take things for granted, not presume that whatever you put out is going to be faultless. Having four-eyed checks, other people check things, automated testing, of course, as well. But nothing sometimes replaces human testing as well. The combination of the two, and not just assuming things like automated testing is going to be successful all the time. And I think it's just having those retrospectives and learning from the mistakes. And I think that's probably the most important part for me, is that I've been involved, I suppose, historically in companies where it's almost not accepted, but it hasn't been looked at under a microscope, and then that same issue comes up again. So you've always got to look for that continuous improvement. You always got to review what could have been done better, and always look for those small marginal improvements. There's always ways to even the small gains that you can do to improve things. So
yes. And on the topic of this question, like teamwork, and there's a constructor championship and is a driver championship. What is the Kubernetes tech garage? Is it a customer or is it an internal developers? What is the Kubernetes garage?
Yeah, I mean, explain again how you mean that question in terms of the.
Yes, I'm actually saying, like, what is it like in F1? You have a garage, pit stop, you get buckle up, chain things around, and then restart the race again. So I'm thinking, like, what is a Kubernetes tech garage? Kubernetes tech garage. Is it a customer? When you see customer filing an issue, you go to their garage, fix things up, and then come back again. Or is it an internal garage for the team working on it?
Well, I'd like to think that our garage is Civo. Like, the customer shouldn't have to go into the garage. The car is performing, well and optimally, like the Kubernetes cluster. And really, our users shouldn't be having to get too much out of the toolbox and going into the garage to fix the car. That's our job, So, and then you've kind of got the pit crew is almost like, of course, you always need a bit of help from our teams to point you in the right direction or support you, or there might be a teething issue or something like that. So we've got the pit crew for that. But in terms of the garage, I think, our users shouldn't enter the garage. That should be our domain.
Yes, absolutely. And one more thing, like, let's say, when is the time there are two teams, like if you Formula One, there are two drivers from the same team driving the car, and he always be competing with each other plus other competitor in the team, like Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, and they all have two drivers. When is the time? How do you actually replace your your front driver with another replacement? How do you actually notice in a Kubernetes world, my main driver is actually not performing very well? Let's give them some kind of relax between some kind of laps, middle of the laps, so can he recharge, and then I can actually bring my replacement driver, second driver in front, and after in the longer run, in a finish stages, I can bring my main driver into the front row. How this thing work in tech in Kubernetes?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I guess I'll be saying that maybe the Civo autoscaler or something. It's kind of like, if a node or you need extra performance, you need extra kind of nodes or anything like that, then the autoscaler might be the thing to help you and enhance the performance and kind of, well, it's going to give you lots of drivers. You're going to have 100 drivers, but in a way, I think I'd probably say, our autoscaler, which is almost like our traction control, shall we say? It's going to keep you on the track and make sure that everything's running optimally for you at all times.
Yes, and big question right now. I think this one you like most. What is DRS, a drag reduction system in Kubernetes?
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm thinking you're making it tough for me now. Yeah, I mean, again, it probably sounds a bit like the autoscaler helping you out, but yeah, I think we obviously have different types of nodes. We have compute optimized nodes, we have RAM optimized nodes, and we have our standard nodes. So maybe the DRS is like, you know, one of our optimized nodes giving you a bit of a power increase, because you need some CPU speed, something like that. However, does that work?
Yes, absolutely super. That's absolutely super work. And also, before I let you go, is people like to know you tell me. I think off the line, who is your favorite driver? Like number one, might be you're currently not following, but from your past, who you think like you like the most watch driver you would like to see races and like to see some wins from him. Your favorite driver from F1.
Yeah, we've probably been, slightly older. I wouldn't say old yet, but from a generation before the current drivers. It was when I was racing, and I guess my hero growing up was Ayrton Senna, um, and unfortunately, he lost his life to Formula One. But in terms of true determination, uh, he was always on the limit, pushing the limits, and had a reputation, that if you saw him coming behind you, you kind of moved out of the way because you knew that if he wasn't going to overtake you, he was probably going to knock you off the track as well. So he was kind of like determined to win at all costs. Really. So he was back in the day, a fun driver to watch, entertaining, and wholehearted. Push things to the limit. So he was probably, I think he was a lot of people's favourites around that time, and was winning a lot of races, and was with some of the top teams at that time, like McLaren and Williams and people like that.
Yes, absolutely. Like you mentioned, Ayrton Senna is one of them. I think if there are some races still available in the F1 channel YouTube. You see some of the overtakes he did in the past. You can't see example of today, like how much of the professional driver and craze for his profession is was. It's been super awesome. Like I've been child and even not born in that time, but it's been super awesome. Like I watched some of these biggest racing. I don't see anyone right now is actually have same kind of a replica of Ayrton Senna, but there are cars right now so much tricky. Like the driver is can actually now win 10 times the race. The Max Verstappen, I think, 10 times
Yeah.
consistently wins 10th race in the calendar year in the same season. That's how incredibly tech and these drivers become right now are. So before I let you go, Mark, there's a KubeCon coming up 1 week, 1 month from now. KubeCon plus there are 3 months till we actually about to close down the year. And can you tell your community, civil community, are there any exciting developments or upcoming features in the pipeline for Civo Kubernetes clusters that user can look forward to?
Yeah, there's quite a few actually. We'll be exhibiting. We've got a booth at KubeCon ourselves, and we tend to try and always launch something new at every sort of major event we do, whether that's a KubeCon or our own conferences. So I know that we're going to be showcasing at KubeCon a kind of login feature that captures logs from clusters and gives you, better observability, that kind of stuff. So that would be worth checking out once we've launched that, and there'll be some socials around that for the people that can't make the event in person. We're doing a lot in the sort of machine learning and AI world at the moment as well. So you can now attach GPUs to clusters. That's available as of a week or two ago. And we've got a GPU service if you just want to use it with just a virtual machine as well. And our Kubeflow service, which is like an end-to-end managed machine learning environment, is available. So we're doing quite a lot in that space. And we partnered recently with a company called Deep Green, where we're actually, or what they're doing is actually immersing servers in liquid and then using the heat from that liquid to actually provide hot water or to heat local swimming pools, like public swimming pools and things. So it's completely carbon neutral, service that we can provide with GPUs, and that's available as of a couple of weeks ago within Civo. So there's some interesting developments. There's a few new things coming. There's a lot more things planned for our next Navigate event in Austin, because we've got a bit more of a runway to get some stuff done, before that event. And we'll be showcasing a couple of surprises there, but I probably can't tell you too much about those ones yet.
Absolutely. And Civo Navigate, I will remind people one more time, the Civo Navigate CFP, call for paper, will be ended in October 8. So make sure your eyes are out and you are actually watching those. Civo Navigate, Austin, Texas. If you want to apply, if you want to give a talk, you have 4 days remaining till today. So next 4 days, even 3 days remaining. So October 8 is the last date for filing or submitting a CFP for the Civo Navigate. So make sure if you have some cool tech that you want to cover that actually listed in the next year Civo Navigate. And there are a bunch of tremendous folks from the community, and you want to be a part of that community as well. So before final thing, and we will wrapping up, Mark, what one thing you see a true about Kubernetes in the past and now false in Kubernetes?
I'd probably say that, Kubernetes, a lot of people talk about Kubernetes being highly complicated, which it is, but it doesn't need to be if you don't want it to be. And I guess there are companies like Civo that can take away a lot of the pain of you managing, clusters and things and the control planes and all the other elements that involved in that. And it doesn't have to be a big price that a hyperscaler is going to charge you for every tiny little thing that you need to monitor it, to put an IP address on, to do this, all the egress charges and things. It can be done in a much more simplistic way. So I think, a lot of people talk about that complexity, but it doesn't have to be that way. It should be for us because we're the cloud provider. We have the complexity. We're having to build all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't need to be that way if you don't want it to be.
Yes, absolutely. I've been totally agree with you. Like, if you happen to ask newer folk who are actually jumping into the Kubernetes world and ask the same question, is Kubernetes complex? And you hand it over Civo Kubernetes cluster to them, the answer is no. Kubernetes is so simpler. We can't imagine like there is any complexity involved in it. When you talk to the team, they still think complexity is still in there, but we are there finally managing for you. So you don't think about it. But it's true. I'm actually what like to think about in the past. It's so complexity involved in it. But right now, that complexity is hidden, and people more actually going toward the simpler solution than Civo Cloud as well. So thank you very much, Mark, for always talking to you, puts a smile on my face. I learn about new things from you, and having an experienced person like you, having a 20-year plus experience, and you're actually a past experience of driving in the F1 is also an attack. Because if you're driving a car at the speed of 230, 240 miles per hour, it's also there are tech involved in it, and you have to play with that tech in order to be a racer. So you have a full career in the tech space. Always been chatting and learning from you. So hope people like the conversation. I look forward to your chat ask question, what do you think wonderful about Civo Kubernetes cluster and how you are using this actually in your day-to-day or even production system. That is, I quite be have interested in learning from you. So give me a very smaller recap in, if audience actually join us lately. Remember, Civo is a simpler, faster, and cheaper solution in the market when it's come to the Kubernetes. So Civo offers a user-friendly platform that simplify Kubernetes cluster management. Civo known for its cost-effective Kubernetes cluster, and Civo infrastructure is designed for speed. Civos make it easy to scale your Kubernetes clusters. Civo provides managed services for Kubernetes, handling tasks such as updates, backup, and maintenance. Civo has an active community that do meetups, that do Civo Navigates like events, and there are some sports, various sports channel, including forum and documentation, and there are some wonderful YouTubers in the internet that can also help you understand how Civo cluster can be stood up. And Civo Kubernetes cluster integrates seamlessly with other cloud native technology like Prometheus, Grafana, or service meshes like Linkerd or Istio or Argo CD. And Civo offers a cluster in multiple data center location around the world. This geographical diversity is essential for yours, ensuring low latency access for users across different regions. With that, I hope this will give you enough shine why you have to use Civo Kubernetes cluster. If you don't, shame on you. Please use it. You have to use it. Thank you very much for joining and listening to our talk. Have a wonderful day. Stay happy, stay healthy. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.